Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to The Division 2, and today I want to dive a bit deeper into the recently released gameplay teaser for the Battle for Brooklyn DLC. In case you missed it, the Division 2 team recently posted a video celebrating the game's 6th anniversary, and among other reveals and announcements, it included our first ever glimpse at actual tangible footage and gameplay from the DLC. I did a video recapping that entire news drop, including my initial reactions to this teaser. In case you want to check that out, I'll link it on screen and down in the description. But today, now that we've all had a chance to sit with this footage for a little bit and analyze it closer, I want to talk about some interesting discoveries that have been made. In this video, I have 5 specific details and observations that both myself and the community have picked out from this Battle for Brooklyn gameplay, stuff that may hint towards some of the scope of what this DLC will deliver, some intriguing glimpses at what could be new gameplay additions on the way, and just some cool good old-fashioned Easter eggs. So if you're as excited as I am for this DLC and want to nerd out on every little detail that we've gotten so far, then strap in, we'll get right to this. If you want to stay up to date on the latest with everything we learn about Battle for Brooklyn moving forward, then be sure to subscribe. There'll be plenty more to discuss leading up to our next news drop, which we know is scheduled for April 23rd. But without further ado, let's get to this. Alright, now like I said, we have 5 items on this list to go over. We're going to go through them one by one, and there will be timestamps labeled in the description for you to skip around as you please. Alright, to begin, I want to dive into the locations that this teaser shows us. Of course, we have the classic Manhattan Bridge view spot that was featured in the Division 1's tutorial area, and don't worry, we'll come back to that. But we already knew that was going to be featured from the DLC key art that was shown to us back in January. Arguably, the more interesting aspect of this teaser is the fuel depot or compound that is shown, where it looks as though the cleaners have taken control of it. I've seen many sharing their guesses and speculation as to where this may be located or what facility the compound is based on in real life, so that we could maybe begin to get an idea of how big this DLC's map is going to be. And so I wanted to share my own thoughts on that matter. Please note that I'm not familiar with Brooklyn in real life. I was there one time many years ago. This is simply going to be some of my educated guesses purely for the purposes of fun and speculation. So back to the image. One of the first things I noticed is how this fuel depot is next to some kind of body of water. And although the image is a bit muddy, it looks as though there is a raft sitting here, possibly one that the agents just disembarked from. If that is what we're seeing, then that could indicate that this is an off-site location from whatever the perimeter of the Brooklyn map will be. This would be very similar to how we travel to the Dark Hours raid at that airport, for example. So I just want to say that it is entirely possible that this compound is far outside from the explorable Brooklyn map. However, if it's not, and if this is connected to the explorable map that we're going to get, I have one theory as to where it may be. And to show you that, we're going to use good old Google Maps. Alright, so here we are in Brooklyn. Couple of things to point out. Firstly, the one confirmed spot that we have for the DLC is right here, the Dumbo Manhattan Bridge view. This is, again, where it showed in that key art and where we saw it in the teaser itself. So we only have a couple of things to go on, right? If we know that this is an area that's going to be included within the map, then we also know, based off of what the devs have said, that the Brooklyn DLC is going to be somewhat smaller than Warlords of New York. And we don't know for certain that that translates just to the map size. It could also be in terms of just the larger offerings of this DLC package. Let's assume that it is probably going to mean a slightly smaller map. If we look over here at Manhattan, the Warlords map roughly stretches. Obviously, it goes along the entire waterfront. We go down here. This is where, like, Camp Clinton is. We get some of this stuff over here. Then it cuts back. We go up to City Hall, of course. That's where one of the control points is. We go up to Chinatown, and the northern border is along the Manhattan Bridge right here. So we get this whole area, which is pretty sizable. If we then compare that to Brooklyn down here, and we know that this spot is going to be included, if you just want a very rough guess from me, I would say we could probably see something like we go along the Brooklyn Bridge here, or the underside of it. Maybe it cuts along some of this freeway. We get a little chunk there. I mean, that would be an appropriate size. They could also kind of, form factor that to the same kind of area down here. But that's more or less what I'm expecting as a chunk from this part of Brooklyn somewhere over here. If that is what we're looking at, and if this compound that the cleaners have taken is somewhere within that area, again, from the little research that I've done on here, I'm not a Brooklyn native. Maybe somebody who lives there is going to shoot this down right away. But one potential area that stood out to me was if we zoom in over here, you'll see that there's kind of these industrial looking plants on this part of the pier. And if we switch to a street view, I think that this kind of lines up with what we could potentially be seeing in terms of gameplay. I think I was able to go there before. Maybe it was somewhere over here. You can see this is a pretty similar view. So look at that. You have one of these like smokestack looking things. I know it's probably not that, but another storage barrel here. While it is not a 1-for-1 for exactly what we're seeing in that teaser for the DLC, this is pretty similar architecture. And as we know from the previous Division games, right, they take inspiration from things, they try and make it as close as possible, but they're typically not able to do an exact one-to-one recreation, often due to copyright issues or whatever else. Again, in fairness, it looks like this might be some sort of electrical plant in real life, and it seems as though in the DLC it's going to be like a fuel depot. But if we're looking at industrial areas like this that are nearby or within that Brooklyn zone that it could be, I think this is absolutely one of them, if you look at some of the stuff here. And if I skip over again, this is the spot we're looking at. If I look at the closest street view on the opposing side of the bay over here, and I turn my camera, I believe it was this way. Look, if I zoom in, these things are the exact, and that stack are the exact same spot that we were just looking at on the Brooklyn side. And if you compare these silos and these, storage containers to what we see in that teaser, they kind of look somewhat similar. So I will let you all be the judges of that, but that is my one prediction on where this could be located. Alright, next up I wanted to look at one other detail regarding this cleaner compound that we get some snippets of. Many in the community have already noted this, as I've seen. However, in this shot from the teaser, we see the agents approaching likely some kind of insertion point, and on the wall here is a glowing green logo. It reads HS Fuels. And the importance here is this is a well-established in-world brand that stretches all the way back to the Division 1. I went in and grabbed some screenshots. HS Fuel gas stations can be found in many places across the game's open worlds. Here's one from the Division 1. Additionally, here's one in Division 2's DC map at the Riverside gas station control point. So very similarly to how the Paradise Lost Incursion showed us the family estate for the Merit, a clothing brand whose marketing can be seen all across the Division 1 and 2. It looks as though Battle for Brooklyn is going to be deepening the Division world's lore by having us travel to and fight within a major HS Fuels compound. Whether or not that will really matter in the grand scope of the story remains to be seen, but regardless, it's those small details and connective tissue across the games that make this world so immersive, in my opinion. Moving on to number 3, I want to take a look at some of the cleaner units that we see within this footage. Now, it has been my prediction, I said it within my first impressions video for this teaser, I've said it in other videos before, that I do not believe we are going to see any brand new enemy factions in this DLC. Rather, I expect that they'll be using the Warlords factions, the Cleaners, Rikers, and Black Tusk. This has already been suggested in some lore entries. However, I've said that I think it's more likely that we will see small tweaks or modifications to existing enemy units to freshen up the gameplay and overall experience. And while we do not yet have evidence that the gameplay will be any different, this teaser does confirm that some changes have been made, at least visually, to the enemy units. Here is a pretty prominent image they show off for one of the Cleaners, and what you may notice compared to the Cleaners we are used to fighting in the Division 2 is that these ones in Brooklyn are now fully sleeved. I grabbed some footage of these same cleaner units within the Manhattan map, and you'll see that they feature a sleeveless design. Same as in the final concept art for this specific cleaner unit, you can see the primary female model has no sleeves on the outfit. And yet, cutting back to the Battle for Brooklyn footage, these cleaners now do. Now, don't misunderstand me, this is a minor detail, absolutely. Likely one done to convey the seasons and weather changes since this is occurring in autumn as opposed to the middle of summer. But what it goes to show me is that the team has taken the time and thought to make the appropriate changes for this new experience. And even though for now all we have is evidence of visual changes, the door is absolutely open for us to see mechanical ones as well. I've said before that they may give some of the cleaners the purple accelerants that we saw in Paradise Lost. Perhaps the Black Tusk will begin incorporating more Warhound variants like Sparkles or Chimera. It's entirely speculation at this point, but seeing this change gives me some faith. Alright, now at number 4 we have the detail that I've seen probably the most amount of people discussing, and that is the mystery sticky bomb. What do I mean? Well, as best seen in this shot from the footage, the agent is carrying with him a sticky bomb skill, yet it doesn't quite look like any of the ones that we have access to in-game right now. The light on it looks to be a reddish orange, honestly could pass for either a burn or fire sticky, but if we look at those models in-game, both have a very distinct tan and gunmetal frame. Compare that to the Battle for Brooklyn shots, and this one looks like it's a charred black with orange rings around the barrel and handle. Now, this could be one of two things, in my opinion. On the one hand, it is possible that we could get new skill variants altogether in the DLC, and that this sticky bomb we're seeing gives us some kind of new ability. Maybe a smoke sticky, a flashbang like we had in Division 1. It is possible. The other option, and the more likely one I think, is that this is a new skin for the existing sticky bomb variants that we have. The devs have already confirmed that they're working on new cosmetic stuff for skills. I covered that in a survey that went out regarding even more potential new endeavors in that realm in this video. I'll link it below in case you want to check it out. And so, given that context, and given the scope that we're looking at for this DLC realistically, I think it makes much more sense that this is a skin we are seeing, not an entirely new variant, but I suppose we'll find out soon enough. Alright, and then finally, I wanted to take a look at and compare the trailer shot of the Manhattan Bridge with that very same location that we went to in The Division 1. If you didn't pick up on it, this spot from where the agent fires the flare in the gameplay is the exact same spot in which we first began our journey as Division agents back in 2016. I'll swap between these two images as I talk, so bear with me, but I hopped into The Division 1, spun up a new character, and grabbed this image right from where you spawn in, and you'll see it's the exact same intersection. The obvious indicators of that are the framing of the Manhattan Bridge in the background, the street signs with the agents being on Water Street. This is where it all began. Now, when you start to look closer, it definitely looks as though some liberties have been taken. For instance, in the Division 1 footage, both sides of the street are pretty much entirely clear of scaffolding or other obstructive structures to the building, whereas in the Battle for Brooklyn footage, there's now a wooden cut-through on the right side and a huge wall of scaffolding on the left. Now, is it impossible that these things weren't added in by local residents in the time between the Division 1's tutorial and when we revisit the space in Battle for Brooklyn? No, it's within the realm of possibility, especially if we're near a settlement or other civilian hub, but it does seem a bit far-fetched. Additionally, stuff like the fire truck on the right is gone, the newspaper stands on the left, and ultimately this is the pitfall of revisiting an old location like this. If you don't copy everything to a T, then no-life judgy fans like myself are going to notice the discrepancies. However, that doesn't mean that things are entirely different. For instance, the classic police car, the one whose window you use to customize your Division 1 agent, that's here. The cabin is now caved in due to just weathering and time, I presume. There's now stuff growing out of there. The Most 24 market is in its exact same spot on the corner. Point is, it's very cool that we will be returning to the very spot where this all began. It's not a one-to-one recreation, but the important details seem to be there, with the passage of time taken into account. So, there you have it, my friends. That is my breakdown and analysis of some key details included in the Battle for Brooklyn gameplay that you may have missed. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this one. I really love making nerdy deep dive videos like these. I would absolutely love to get your guys' thoughts and reactions not only to the stuff I talked about in this video, but additionally any other things that you may have spotted within the teaser, or just general thoughts and predictions on the DLC overall. As I mentioned in the intro, we don't have too long to wait for more info. We know it's coming on April 23rd, so some exciting times indeed. I can't wait to get my hands on it. That's going to do it for me on this one, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.